about the size of a CD or a DVD or something with a D that's round, and you're going to go right in the center of the paper. So very lightly sketch out a big, lumpy, messy, squiggly, wibbly, wobbly, squiggly, wiggly circle. And if it's not a perfect circle, don't worry about it. Doesn't need to be, right? Just as long as it's not a triangle or something. Sketch out very, very lightly. Use a lot of very messy, light lines to make one big shape. Now what we're going to do with this really big, lumpy, messy, squiggly circle is we're going to put guidelines through it. The guidelines are only there to help show where to put everything, so keep those light too. And it's going to go, you're going to have one that goes on the very top of the circle. It's going to go around the left-hand side, and it's going to reach down to the bottom. This is our vertical guideline. This shows where the center of his face goes. That's it. We're going to be seeing him off to his sides. One side's going to be larger than the other. We're also going to draw a horizontal guideline that's going to split the circle more or less in half. So this goes right through the middle of the circle. It's kind of a curvy line. Those at the top of the circle will end up being a little bit bigger than the bottom. And that horizontal line is for his eyes and his cheeks and his nose. So it doesn't look like Chip just yet. That's fine. What we'll do next is we're going to add a few more shapes to this and build them up more. Make him a little more chipmunky. So first off is we want to sketch out his eyes. And Chip has kind of large eyes for a chipmunk. The first one goes about halfway between the vertical line, the center of his face, and the right side of the circle, the back of his head. And it's sitting on the horizontal guideline. So it's going right in there, right in the largest part of the circle. So go ahead and sketch out this really big oval, nice big oval. And that'll give us his first eye. Now his other eye is same thing. It's an oval. It's going to go right on the left side of the circle, right on the horizontal guideline. So a lot of space between Chip's eyes. There we go. It's going to be just slightly more slender here on the side, I think. All right. So, the next thing I want to do is I want to give Chip his snout. So, he's a chipmunk, so he has a snout, just like a dog or a cat would have a muzzle. Same thing. Where he put his nose, roof of his mouth as well. So, it's going to be drawn with the bump initially. It goes right between his two eyes. You see this big bump, and then back down again. That's going to be the very top of his snout. The rest of his snout's going to be, well, it's the same thing, really. It's the same line anyway. On the left side of his head, that line is going to reach down into the bottom half of his head. It's going to reach back to the vertical line. And because the snout is the roof of his mouth, you need to have the bottom of his snout a little bit longer than that. It's going to reach past the vertical line and curl up underneath his right eye. Basically, what you're getting is a really, really big curlicue. Like that. Kind of looks like a really big, stretched out letter C, essentially. We also want to sketch out his cheeks. He's a chipmunk. He's got big, chubby chipmunk cheeks. It's in his contract. So what we'll do is we're going to start on the left side of the circle at the horizontal guideline. And we're going to draw a really, really, really big bump. Right? It's going to curve off the edge of the circle, and it's going to spin around. It's going to reach right back underneath the circle. It's not going to attach to anything just yet. It's just going to hang out here by itself, right underneath the circle. His other cheek will do the same thing. It's going to start, though, just behind his eyeball on the horizontal guideline. You're going to draw a line that reaches down out of the circle, spins around, and goes right back to his cheek, to his other cheek. So you get this big shape going around the bottom of the circle. The tail are exactly the same shape initially as his eyes. About the same size, too. The first ear, you go from his right eye straight up, that's where you put the ear. And it's going to be kind of half of an oval. So it's going to be a line that curves up, but then it drops back down. His other ear does exactly the same thing. It pops up from behind his head, just to the left of the ear, so it curves up, and then back down. And this will give us all the basic shapes you need for Chip, or Dale, or even Garfield. We don't know Garfield yet, but anyway. So now we can take this, we can start adding in all the fun stuff, all the little details that will make this a chipmunk. And the first thing I'll do, the easiest way to tell Chip and Dale apart is to look at their noses. So Chip has a nose that looks like a chocolate chip. There you go. So right on the front of his snout, you're going to see this triangle-shaped nose. So go ahead and sketch out this upside-down triangle. That'll give us his upside-down chocolate chip. There you go. Sketch out very, very lightly. Now, he's a very soft, curvy, squishy sort of character, so keep this triangle kind of rounded on the corners. Like that. Once the nose is sketched out, then we can trace over it, we can darken it in, we can polish it up a little bit. But again, a really big chocolate chip nose for Chip. If you ever draw Dale, his nose is a big red clown nose, basically. So it does look actually very different. On the front of his, or on the top of his nose, I like to add this little glint, this little bit of light. Right? Because he's a chipmunk, his nose is going to be kind of damp and shiny, just like you get a dog or a cat. And then we'll just shade it in, color it in, nice and dark, right around that little glint of light. And that's it for his nose. And don't worry if you go outside the lines, I just tell people that he sneezed. Alright, so that's Chip's chocolate chip nose. Next thing for Chip is to finish up the very top of his snout. So from the left side of his nose to the horizontal line, I'm just going to trace over the very top of the snout. And since he's a chipmunk, he's covered in different stripes and spots and different patterns. So from the right side of his nose to the back of his snout, I'm just going to draw this thin little line. And we end up with this big stripe on the top of the snout. The rest of the snout's not really any different. Underneath his nose, we need to add a little wrinkle. He's got a little bit of a cleft lip. So that's what this little wrinkle is. And then we can have that wrinkle just stretch all the way around the bottom of his snout. Just trace over the bottom of his snout until it's underneath his eye. And at the end of that line, when it's under his eye, draw a big wrinkle, and that'll give us his laugh line, or his dimple. And then as the other side of his snout, we just trace over that. We just close it up. We're not going to see the other corner of his mouth, just because, well, his nose is in the way. All right, and then Chip and Dale, another way to tell them apart would be their teeth. Dale has two teeth, like Goofy does. You see these big buck teeth on either side of his mouth. Chip, on the other hand, has one large tooth, goes in the very front of his snout. And it's not sharp and pointy like everything on Chip. It's kind of a curvy shape. Kind of looks like a little Stay Puft marshmallow. That is his tooth. So unlike Dale, Chip did wear his retainer. And because we can see his tooth, that means he's smiling at us with his mouth wide open. Most Disney characters will do that. So we're going to start his cheek again, and his laugh line. We're going to draw a line that's going to reach down towards the bottom of the paper, or bottom of his head. And then right as we get to the bottom of his head, this line's going to drop just down out of his head a tiny, tiny bit, but it's going to curve back up behind his tooth. Just like that. So we get this, basically a really big happy face smile. It's just his tooth gets in the way of something. And inside of his mouth, we're not going to see that much inside of his mouth, to be honest with you. We'll see his tongue, because that's where they keep tongues these days. Basically, the tongue is going to be your classic cartoon character tongue. It's going to be a bump in his mouth. That's it, just a little bump. Behind his tongue, I suppose you could draw some, I suppose he likes acorns. You could also give him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Either way, it's kind of shaded in, nice and dark. You can also draw some popcorn that he stole out of a stroller out from here. He's the one who taught all the squirrels to do it, actually. Pretty shame. He's a bit of a mastermind. Anyway, next thing we're going to do for Chip is we're going to draw his bottom lip. Chip and Dale have a rather large bottom lip. He's starting his laugh line, and basically you're just drawing the exact same shape as his mouth. It's just bigger. So that's what I'll draw. It's a line that drops down, it goes around his mouth, it goes back up to his tooth. Alright, and then we can work on his cheeks a little bit. One thing you'll see with Chip and Dale is that when they smile, their cheeks are so chubby that they kind of wrinkle up over the bottom of his eye. So we're going to see this little bump on the bottom of either eyeball, which is, again, part of his cheek. And then on either cheek, you're going to see that he has kind of these long, extra fluffy tufts of fur. I have to call them his sideburns because long sideburns are pretty awesome. So on either cheek, you're going to see these three curls, basically. On the left, you can see this little curl that curls up and then down. It's a little loop, little curl or curvy line. Underneath that, we'll see a second one that's just a little bit lower. It goes right along the side of his cheek. And then a third one that is really just right on the very, very, very corner, very side of the cheek. These three curls. The other cheek, same thing. See one that curls up just a little bit and curls down. And then the second one that goes right underneath that, just following the shape of the cheek. And then a third one that's just right along the side of his cheek. And this will show us that Chip is both very, very fuzzy and very, very wuzzy at the same time. A little bit different than Dale. Dale's just fluffy. It's okay though, he's taking a multivitamin. And then the bottom of his cheeks will trace right around the bottom of his cheeks, down to the bottom lip. And that's essentially the bottom half of our chipmunk. Then we can work on his eyes, and Chip's eyes are actually a little bit more simple to finish up than Dale's. With Chip, we're going to see his pupils in the corner of his eyes. Well, there's these smaller ovals. This way it looks like he's staring back at us. Which should hopefully look a little more friendly, or a little more creepy, either way. Inside of the pupils, you're going to see a little glint, a little sparkle of light, just like you see in his nose, right at the top. And then we can color in or shade in those pupils nice and dark. And then what makes Chip's eyes a little easier to draw than Dale's is Chip's eyes are always wide open, but Dale's eyes are always kind of droopy and heavy, kind of like he's about ready to fall asleep. Right? So since this is Chip, we'll just draw his eyes wide open. He goes to Starbucks, so he's okay. He starts every day with a hazelnut latte. Sometimes a blueberry scone if he's going to be. Alright, and then next thing we do for Chip is give him his eyebrows. And Chip has pretty large eyebrows. They're not really eyebrows though, they're kind of like another set of stripes that you would see in his fur. But we'll start on the right cheek, right hand side. We're going to draw a big curvy line. It's going to reach up from his cheek. It goes around his eye. Goes all the way near the top of his head, goes around his eye, and then it goes back down to his snout. Basically, it's just a big upside down letter U, essentially. After all, the letter U does stand for Chip. So. And then his other eyebrow is the same thing, except it's, it's over the other eye. It's a little bit smaller. It's going to kind of pop up from behind his nose and just skims right past his eye. And it's going to head up right to the edge of the circle. Once you get to the edge of the circle, it's going to curve out of the circle so it can reach back down to his cheek. So this side of his head's getting widened out just a little bit. And then his ears. So the ears aren't really that tricky to do on Chip and Dale. There's not that much to them. I'll trace around the outline of his ear, his right ear first. Inside of his right ear, you're going to see a very, very, very small, very skinny oval. And this just represents all the little wrinkles and folds that you would find in an ear. The other ear, you're going to see that's kind of the same thing. You trace over the outline of it. This ear, though, would not be pointed at us. It's more pointed away from us. So you'll see this thin little wrinkle in the left side of his ear, but that's about it. And then the edge of the circle we started with is the side of his head. So from his left eyebrow right in between his ears, just close up the top of his head. Just like that. And then from the left ear down to his cheek, again, just close up that part of his head, the back of his head. And then as a finishing touch, Chip and Dale are brown chipmunks. They're dark brown in places and they're light brown in places. We don't have dark or light brown, so use the side of your pencil wherever he's more of a darker color. Mostly the top of his head and his nose and his little sideburns. Just gotta shade them in real quick. Nice and light, just real quick. It'll help cover up some of the guidelines, and it will, hopefully anyway, make his head just feel a little more solid, a little more pulled together. And if you're outside the lines, don't worry about it. Chip doesn't mind. Not really. It's only Donald Duck you gotta watch out for. That's really about it. That is a very, 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 very quick sketch of a chipmunk. So when you're done, you want to be sure to put your name somewhere at the bottom of the page. That way everybody knows whose copyright infringement belongs to whom. And we'll be in touch in a few weeks. It takes a while. We're a big company. Today's date is December the 27th, 2015. Alright, so there you go. That is Chip. If you have any questions, you're welcome to come to the front of the room and ask. I'll be more than happy to help you out up here in the very front if I can. If I don't have an answer for you, just assume the answer is 42. You should be okay. Exit door is going to be